At first, the betrayal itself wasn't the most shocking part. What followed was not the act, the assumption, the quiet belief that nothing had really changed. They behaved as if crossing the line didn't revoke their access, as if loyalty was optional but proximity was guaranteed, as if they could harm you and still remain comfortably present in your life without effort, without repair, without consequence. They stepped over integrity without hesitation, then turned around expecting familiarity. That expectation revealed more than the betrayal ever could. They spoke to you with the same tone, the same comfort, the same entitlement, as if trust hadn't been fractured, as if boundaries were exaggerations, as if accountability was something negotiable. They treated betrayal like a temporary inconvenience. You understood it as a permanent shift. Because betrayal doesn't just hurt, it changes the structure of the relationship entirely. They assumed time would smooth it over. You recognized that time doesn't restore trust, behavior does. And behavior was the very thing they had already proven unreliable. They wanted closeness without responsibility, warmth without effort, forgiveness without reconstruction. They expected you to separate the wound from the one who caused it, to keep the door open while ignoring the smoke. But clarity doesn't work that way. Once it arrives, it doesn't negotiate. They believed explanations could soften impact, that better words could undo damaged foundations. You had already learned the truth most people avoid. Intentions don't repair outcomes. Damage doesn't reverse simply because someone becomes articulate about it later. They treated trust like a resource they could borrow recklessly and return when convenient. They forgot that trust depreciates with every misuse. What once came freely now required standards they could no longer meet. They still expected relevance in your life, still expected emotional access, still expected updates, availability, familiarity. They confused past closeness with permanent entitlement. They forgot a critical rule of adult relationships: access is conditional, and conditions are enforced through consistency. They showed you who they were when it mattered, then seemed surprised when you finally believed them. They hoped your doubt would protect them from consequence. You chose discernment instead. And discernment does not argue. They moved as if betrayal was a phase. You moved as if it was a verdict. They expected delays, conversations, negotiations. You responded with distance, quiet, clean, final. They wanted comfort from the person they destabilized, safety from the one they made unsafe, peace from the space they disrupted. That contradiction revealed everything. They wanted generosity after disloyalty, mercy after manipulation, access after violation. They asked for things they had already disqualified themselves from receiving. They believed your heart was public property, something they could revisit whenever guilt appeared. They didn't realize your heart became private the moment it broke. They wanted your continued presence to prove they hadn't hurt you. They wanted availability to erase accountability. You denied them that illusion. They tried speaking to you the same way as before. You responded like someone who had learned too much. They felt the shift immediately. Not because you announced it, but because access was no longer automatic. They resented your boundaries because boundaries remove leverage. They wanted explanations they could debate, justifications they could poke holes in. You offered silence instead. Not avoidance, resolution. They wanted proximity to your healing without earning proximity to your life. You removed the reach entirely. They appealed to the version of you that forgave quickly. You answered from the version of you that survived. They called you cold for protecting yourself, but never called themselves reckless for betraying you. They labeled your self-respect as cruelty to escape accountability. They wanted to be the exception to the rule they forced you to learn. The rule that betrayal ends closeness, the rule that access follows respect. They asked for another chance as if it were a favor, not a risk that cost something real. They treated trust like a game. You treated it like your future depended on it. They returned as if nothing had happened, ignoring the wreckage, ignoring the bridge they burned, expecting the door to remain unlocked. They wanted to matter again. You showed them importance now has conditions, and they violated every one of them. They tried to remind you of the good moments, as if memory could override patterns, as if the past could supervise the present. You focused on consistency instead. They believed time would weaken your resolve. They underestimated what betrayal teaches. It teaches permanence in decisions. They wanted forgiveness attached to renewed access. You separated the two with precision. Peace without re-entry, closure without contact. They wanted to stay after betraying you. You removed them without spectacle. No confrontation, no performance, no drama. Just clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from finally valuing your peace. And here's the truth that will linger longer than anger ever could. They didn't lose access because you hated them. They lost access because you understood them. You outgrew the version of yourself that tolerated disloyalty. You didn't slam the door, you closed it calmly. Their betrayal didn't shock you as much as what followed. Their assumption that nothing sacred had been violated. They treated betrayal like an incident. You recognized it as a fracture, one that permanently alters how trust breathes. They wanted continuity in a story they themselves interrupted. They acted as if your absence was temporary, as if silence was negotiable. They never considered that withdrawal could be an answer. They spoke to you with familiarity they no longer earned. The comfort in their tone didn't match the distance they created. They wanted front-row seats to your healing without accountability. They tried to re-enter casually, hoping time alone would clean what only responsibility could. They wanted forgiveness to function as a shortcut, a reset button. You understood forgiveness is not a bypass, it's a boundary. They wanted empathy to rescue them from consequence, compassion to blur clarity. They used history as leverage. They forgot history doesn't erase behavior, it exposes it. They framed betrayal as misunderstanding. You recognized it as choice. They argued intention. You evaluated pattern. They reached for your life as if healing was public space. They wanted relevance in a chapter that required alignment, not nostalgia. They underestimated how permanent understanding becomes once it arrives. They expected you to make room out of who you used to be. They were not prepared to meet who you became. They spoke as if they still had emotional jurisdiction. You listened as someone who had reclaimed authority. They wanted reassurance. They received silence. Not punishment, proof. Proof that importance now requires integrity. They felt confused by your boundaries. They forgot boundaries only feel aggressive to those who benefited from their absence. They wanted to witness your rise without acknowledging their role in the fall. They offered politeness instead of repair. You recognized politeness after betrayal as avoidance, not healing. They wanted the house without